Wow, I can follow.
You want to know what's dead?
The tree is dead.
Yeah, the tree's dead.
We're recording.
Okay, wonderful. All right.
Ryan's
Okay,
coming.
you don't even need it. But it's going to come every week.
Take multiples.
Okay. I would like to call the September 20th, 2018 City Council meeting to order, and Councilman Larry Page is going to do our opening.
Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful that we can be here in this environment this day. We're especially mindful, being 150 years of that our city has been in existence, for all the city people, that the council and the mayors and the other people that have done wonderful and created a wonderful city for us. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve in this capacity, and we ask you that Spirit and wisdom would be with us, that we can make good decisions, that we can create a long-term vision that would benefit the citizens of Kaysville as well. We ask you to be mindful of all those who serve in our city, not only those who that protect us and bless our lives, but also those that give of their time to be a blessing to the citizens. And we are so grateful again for all that thou hast given us, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like the audience to please arise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. First, I want to announce that we are going to swap. We're going to have Youth City Council oath of office before rules of procedure update. But first, we would like to invite our fire chief, Paul Erickson, forward.
Mayor, council members, city leaders, thank you for the opportunity. I got kind of an honor today, it is an honor today. I received from the Utah Fire and Rescue Academy, they notified Mr. Ryan Eckhart that he would be receiving the Supervisor Fire Officer Designation Award. I did not find out the number. It's a new designation that the state of Utah has accepted from the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So I don't have the number of people that are certified in the state yet, but it's very few. Just to tell you a little bit about it, Captain Eckhart would be awarded the Supervisory Fire Officer designation. This designation is an achievement by documenting a comprehensive body of career development courses, higher education, certifications, competencies, and experience based on criteria that were initially developed by the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and the program was adopted by the state of Utah. He has demonstrated the commitment and professionalism defined in this in his presentations. He has served several hundred hours to complete this. If you start from scratch, it takes you about 2 years. So I wanted to recognize Captain Eckhart. Come up here, please. The Utah Commission on Fire Officer Designation hereby awards the title of Supervising Fire Officer to Ryan Eckhart. Awesome job. Thank you.
Would it be okay if we had a picture with you?
Yes.
This is a big deal. All right.
He's in charge.
Better. Thanks.
Yes, please. Chief.
Just stay here.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. I thought it'd be important for the city to recognize Fire Prevention Week, which is every year in our nation. It's been around since 1922. It has been the longest public safety observance in our history. 1925, President Coolidge proclaimed Fire Prevention Week as a national observance, making it the longest-running public health observance in our country. During Fire Prevention Week, children, adults, teachers, and others learn about fire safety. Firefighters provide life-saving education and efforts to decrease casualties caused by fire. Fire Prevention Week is observed each year during the week of October 9th in commemoration with the Great Chicago Fire, which began on October 8th, 1871, and caused devastating damage. The horrific conflagration killed more than 250 people, left 100,000 homeless, and 17,400 structures were burned in more than 2,000 acres. So I think it's a good thing. I appreciate the mayor and council members for signing off on that and declaring that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have the proclamation here, which says essentially the same thing that you just read. So if it's okay, let's have a picture with the chief with the proclamation. Your exercise. All right. Thank you. All right. And also, just wanted to say thank you to our fire department, also police department. We had a ruck march organized by Chief Erickson on September 11th, which was very well done, and it really moved a lot of people. So thank you for organizing that. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, now we're going to go to the Youth City Council Oath of Office. And I thought what we'd do is Councilmember Barber is the liaison to that. And if you could say a couple words, have the folks come up, and I'll do the oath of office.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we love our Youth City Council. It's an opportunity for youth in the area to have a chance doing what we do. Serving on an actual city council. We have a mayor, Emily Alvord, who's fantastic, and she leads the group. And they do all sorts of things throughout the city. They go through an application process. We interview them, and they get to decide who's able to serve. Chosen by that, we have 13 serving right now, I believe, and they're fantastic from different high schools and throughout the city. So we'll have Emily come up, and she's going to say just a few things about what they do throughout the city, and then I'll also read the names of the rest of them, and they can come up, and then we'll have them get sworn in by the mayor.
So the Youth City Council is an opportunity for the youth of the area to engage in Kaysville and to really take a stance and be proud and be a part of our city. We help out with service projects that either we initiate or that the city is putting on. We help man a lot of city events, as well as hold mock city council meetings and go toward the Capitol once a year in the local legislative state.
Excellent. And so we have, actually it's 12, sorry, I should have said that. So I'll call their names, and then you guys can come up, and then Mayor Witt will lead you in the oath of office. So Claire Scott, Anna Van Noy, Allison Jarman, Jeremy Whitaker, Marcus Hayden, Tom Amee, Gracie Rasmussen, Camille Jepson, Emily Alvord, our mayor, Coleman Stringer, Kayla Essex, Mitchell Harding. And I failed to mention as well, we have an amazing advisor, Linda Francis, if you want to join us up here. She helps keep us all running and... Oh, good call.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for being willing to serve your community in this way. So if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
that I will support.
that I will support,
Obey and defend.
obey, and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
And that I will discharge the duties
and that I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you. Council, come on down. One more time. One more time.
Why doesn't she be in it, Michelle? Oh my goodness. Let's put together. All right. Oh, there you go. Okay. Got it. Thanks. All right. Thank you. Oh, let's do that.
Do you want to send it with them? Yeah. Just have them sign it out there. We'll forget.
All right. Nick,
Mayor, do you want to wait for Maria?
I will. Thanks. And just while we're waiting, since we have a new council member on board, and we're about nine months in, it's a good time to have a refresher on what our rules of procedure are. And I don't know if you know this, but after every council meeting, I go back and re-watch the council meeting, kind of like, if you were playing a sport or something. And I noticed that I had been a little bit lax in some of our rules of procedure, and so I asked Nick if he could just give us a refresher, if you will, on our rules.
Happy to, Mayor. Thanks
Thanks.
for inviting me to do that. This is entitled Updates, but there really are no updates. It's just a refresher on the basic rules of procedure that we use at Kaysville City. So I'll walk through kind of the basic procedure and why we do it that way, and then I'll talk about two areas that we sometimes forget about, overlook. So first, the first step is that the mayor announces what the agenda item is, and then the mayor invites whoever is going to present on that item to come forward to give a presentation. When they're done, then you, the mayor of the city council, can ask that presenter any kind of technical questions that you need to get any kind of clarification on the item. After that, then the mayor invites the public that have signed up to come forward if it's a public hearing. And then after the public's had the opportunity to speak, the next step is that there should be a motion. There's really nothing for the council to discuss, to debate, until there's a motion, because the motion is an indicator of which way at least one of you wants to go on the item. After that, a motion is made, the mayor calls for a second, and then at that point, the mayor should repeat the motion so that everybody's clear, and then you all discuss the motion. Now, sometimes I've heard questions of, can I ask a question again? These rules should, I think, be seen as to quote Pirates of the Caribbean, more like guidelines. And it's not inappropriate to have the presenter come back up and ask them a question. That's certainly understandable as you discuss and debate it. Further questions may arise. When you feel like you've discussed it to the extent that you need to, then the mayor will call for a vote, and then the mayor should announce the vote and if it passed or failed. So that's the basic procedure. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's generally how it should go. Where I see councils and planning commissions maybe get ahead of themselves as they start discussing it before there's a motion on the table, and that's something that maybe to keep in mind. I wanted to talk about rule number 3, which states that there should be one matter at a time and one speaker at a time. I have a lot of sympathy for Maria, who types furiously, but if you're here and you're trying to follow the discussion or you're watching online, it's very helpful if the discussion, the debate, the argument proceeds in a civil manner. One person speaks at a time, one person makes their point at a time. The way that you indicate that you're, according to the rules, the way that you indicate that you'd like to make a comment is you raise your hand, the mayor calls on you. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about non-debatable motions. I don't think these are used very often, but they're kind of interesting and could be used. And these are found in Rule 7. And a non-debatable motion means that when the motion's been made and seconded, then there is no discussion on whether it's a good motion or anything. It just goes boom right to a vote on the motion. And there are 5 of them. A motion to adjourn, which is rarely discussed. A motion to take a recess, and that motion should include the amount of time, whether you're going to take a 5-minute recess, and the rules indicate that you could take anywhere from a few minutes to an hour on a recess. You can also move to fix the time to adjourn, which perhaps you have an appointment that you need to be at 8:30, and you can get the other members of the council to agree. You could move at the beginning of the meeting that the meeting end at a specific time. A motion to table or a motion to limit debate. So if you feel like the debate has gone on long enough and you want to end that debate and move it to a vote, you can move to limit debate, and if that gets seconded and passes by a simple majority, then it goes, the item on the table, the motion that's on the table, immediately goes to a vote. So I think Robert's Rules of Order is kind of like learning to play tennis or learning to water ski. You know what you want to do. It's just hard to, you swing your arm in tennis or you try to get up on the water skis and you know what you're trying to do, but you just can't do it. And I think if you briefly review the rules occasionally, it's very helpful and it makes the meeting flow smoother. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the reference to the pirate code.
Actually, I did not call on you yet. Councilmember Adams, go ahead.
Oh, I think he heard me.
I'm sorry, what?
Good reference to the pirate code.
Oh, thank you. Anytime I can.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going on to declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of interest?
No.
Okay, thank you. I would now entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any questions? Any comments? Councilmember Adams.
There's just a quick comment on the third one, unless the order has changed. The housing gap resolution. Quickly in there, it discusses the need to try and reduce impact fees, which, you know, I'm all for making things economical, especially for first-time buyers. But just to point out again, you know, I hope that we're not going to be too lackadaisical in that. It's one of the items that we specifically, I guess, have declared as a city that we are going to try and do. But we're also in the midst of trying to revise our impact fees. For example, an impact fee on the road line item is about $500 per building permit in Kaysville. You step outside of our boundary to our neighboring cities and it's about $2,700 on that line item. So I just want to say we need to I just advise going forward that we're careful that, yeah, it's great to get on board with this. This is a good cause, but I don't think we can sacrifice or, skimp out on where the fees actually need to be in relation to current market value around us. We all know we have a road fee in place now, and I hate to see that fee stay low and the road fee stay up and going. I think that just a comment there. I think we ought to be careful and sensitive with that and make sure we're market value on that and not discounting that and cutting ourselves short. Well, not ourselves, our roads.
Yeah.
All right, thank
point.
you. All right. Okay, let's start with Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. All right, we're moving on to our action items. First is an agreement with Utah Local Governments Trust, Resolution 18-9-3, and Shane.
Yeah, Mayor, at the last meeting we presented the trust, Utah Local Governments Trust, as a staff recommendation for our property and liability insurance. And we had a discussion with that. I think you met a couple of their representatives. They're here today, too, just in case, if you have any questions. But I think what we're looking for is an adoption of this resolution, which would contractually obligate us to have them provide us their insurance services starting October 1. So that's what we're looking for. If you have questions, we're here.
Okay, thank you. We did not have anybody sign up to speak to this item, so we will go to questions from council. Any questions from council? Okay.
I have no questions.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
We thought about having them bid out other services as well. Is that'll be completely separate from this?
Yeah. What they we already have if you're talking about health insurance, we already have a health insurance contractor, so we'd have to do that as a completely separate process.
Okay.
Which I think that if they wanted to bid, they could do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councilmember Adams?
Question. I guess I'll just reiterate it. So, do we anticipate that? I appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks for the support there. Do we anticipate that going forward in the future, with the recognized and acknowledged savings that we've had? You acknowledged, last time that our workers' comp, it substantially went down due to bidding it out. Now we've realized that our property and liability has substantially gone down due to bidding it out. Might we entertain bidding out bidders on health insurance? Can we anticipate seeing that coming, let's say, in the next 6 months? Are you inclined to do so with the track record of savings you've accrued so far?
That's completely up to you. Health insurance is a completely different animal. It's not the same as property liability, workers' comp. They just work in different worlds. The reason we have a certain premium, and whether that's an increase or a decrease, is because of because of the employees we have, our history. It's just a different animal. It's not because of the consultant that we use. Now, that consultant can be good or bad. That's a separate conversation. If you would like us to go out to bid on the consultant services, we certainly can do that. But we go out to bid for health insurance every year. Mm-hmm. So.
And Shane, so what's the timeline? I'm trying to remember when we were making that decision last time.
On the health insurance?
Yeah.
We talked about it last year when we talked about health insurance, but we have no intention right now of going out to bid for our current consultant's GBS. But again, if you'd like us to, we certainly can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Fair.
All right.
Yes.
I have heard that there are opportunities to actually save money by using, if you will allow me to call them middlemen, by using different middlemen. I did hear some commentary in the audience. Might I ask, are there representatives here of the trust? Could we ask them to give their opinion on this matter? Do they see times where they're able to save, being a local government's trust over private entities?
It's actually, if I'm understanding our agenda correctly, that's not what we're talking about tonight. That would be a great question to talk to him about individually, for sure.
If I may quickly point out.
No, you may not.
I think that's where your agenda style gets restricted.
I would like to ask for
you represent the people.
a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to go ahead. I'll move that we adopt agreement with Utah Local Government Trust, Resolution 1893, as presented to us.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Comments? Seeing none, we will begin the vote. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Always for savings, of course, aye.
All right. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. Preliminary plat approval for the 40 East Crestwood PUD subdivision. Lyle.
Okay, Mayor and Council, this may feel a little bit like deja vu. This is a subdivision not too far here from City Hall, near Heritage Park off of 40 Crestwood Road. The property has been zoned for many years, RM, residential multifamily, and just over a year ago, pretty much the exact same proposal came through the Planning Commission and City Council process for approval. 6 units in essentially 2 different buildings, townhome style development at this property. Because nothing was followed up on, they didn't end up building or pursuing their approval. It has expired, and so they had to start over with our approval process. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this item and has passed along a recommendation. You can see just briefly here on the screen the lot layout, private drive coming in to 2 separate buildings with 3 units in each. A little sketch, it looks something like that. It's a 2-story building, garage and living space on the bottom, rooms and such on the upper floor. Roughly 1,300 square foot footprint per unit, and that's a photo of another example of what this development would look like. Based on that, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously approval of the preliminary plat on this project with the condition that the actual construction looks similar to what's been presented.
Thank you, Lyle. I don't believe anybody has signed up to speak to this, so we will go to questions from Council. Councilmember DeCare.
Lyle, can remind me on this. I actually think I was part of this back a while ago, but remind me, are these rentals or are these bought? And
yeah, so the way that they are platted, every unit could be bought and sold individually. And so the developer could control and hold on to every single one of them, but it is a preferred style of platting because it opens that option of selling each unit individually, so they could be owner-occupied.
So each one will, right, so as it stands right now, then each one is for sale?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no more questions, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that we grant preliminary plat approval for 40 East Crestwood PUD subdivision.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Adams for the approval of the preliminary plat on 40 East Crestwood PUD subdivision. Any comments? Seeing none, we will vote. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. Our economic incentive plan, Shane.
Thanks, Mayor. At the last meeting, we discussed this economic incentive plan, and I think we had consensus on the plan that we presented to you in your packet. We tweaked a couple of little items. Mostly, I think those were technical as opposed to substantive. I think Councilmember Garn made a couple of comments on grammatical errors that we had in that document. But I think we've got a document that's ready for your adoption, and we're here for questions. Lyle has also been very instrumental in that document from start to finish. So,
thank you. I don't believe we have any comments from the public on this item. So, any questions from council? I see no questions. Yes, Councilmember Barber.
And this is a more general question, but if we had to summarize this economic incentive plan to a prospective resident, do you feel, or sorry, prospective businesses, do you feel like there's a way we can, without having to read the entire document, the spirit of it, the spirit of the initiative?
What I would say is that this plan outlines the roles for both the council and the staff in incentivizing any future potential business in coming to Kaysville. And it outlines some of the possibilities, not probably all the possibilities, but most of the possibilities that were on the table as far as the city granting an incentive to a potential business. That's what I'd say more or less.
Yeah.
Did I leave anything out there?
Yeah, to echo that, I think that's all accurate. And if a business were to come and say, what is the gist of this policy? What does it mean to me? I would say if you can show us that your business can cause a benefit to the city, and there are different factors to that, then we'll on a case-by-case basis consider that and have different options that we could utilize to help you come to Kaysville.
Excellent. Can I follow up?
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
Just as I've read over it and spoken with businesses here, I think what I'm trying to state, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're aware of lots of different types of incentives that can come to businesses. This is just giving an outline, but it's also the key is the case-by-case basis and the authority for city staff to work with council and businesses.
I'd say that's absolutely true. We tried to keep it as open as possible. If you remember when we first started talking about this, I had mentioned that I went to a lot of Davis County cities and asked for their economic development plans or incentive plans, and none of them have one. That doesn't mean that they don't exist; they're out there, but none of them have them. And they all said the same thing. It's just such a moving target. So we tried to do one that was very, like you said, case by case. We could take things and agree to do some things and not agree to do others.
Thank you.
And also, what I really appreciate about this is that it is the council who decides, right? So, if you feel that it is important in one case to pull out all the stops, you can pull out all the stops. If it does not merit that, we're not obligated to offer economic incentives if it doesn't pencil out. So that's what's great about this. It's very adjustable, and it's at the discretion of council.
Absolutely.
All right.
That's helpful.
Any other questions at this time? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the economic incentive plan.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any further comments? Yes, Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. A brief comment that, philosophically, I suppose you could make an argument that is made at a higher level than the city, that no city should provide incentives. We shouldn't be picking winners and losers, and we shouldn't be incentivizing businesses. But the fact of the matter is, and if I thought about that, I'm not sure which side I fall on that, because there's also international competition for business as well. And so it's a much larger issue, and it's a decision made at a higher level than this council. So what we're left with is the reality of being able to compete against other cities, other states, even for business. And I do like the way it says, however, the policy states, that if we do not see a benefit, so in other words, it can't be more than 50%, even during a 10-year period, for example, you still have to add 50%. And to an existing business, it has to improve the revenue before we give. So it has to benefit the city in order to go forward, and that's in the policy. Now, I suppose council could still ignore the policy, I suppose, but it's not in code, but it does provide a really nice guideline for, hey, we only approve these when it benefits the city, and we can see the tax increment financing actually improving revenue and improving the city.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Page.
Actually, I have a whole lot. I've been dissecting this a little bit. I really like this. I think it's broke down in like 4 different areas. I think it recognizes that all businesses, they really aren't created equal. They're really not. And I think it incentivizes the quality of business, the job-creating businesses, and income-producing businesses for the city, and the sales tax that comes from that. I think most incentives are non-financial, what I can see through this, which the majority in kind, infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, things the city can provide in-house, which is good. If financial, it's more of a reimburse and discount income, already being made by the city, like the sales tax fees, et cetera. I think it gives existing businesses incentives to expand and invest. It revitalizes existing operations, improves existing properties, adds value to the surrounding area, encourages investment in jobs for the city, allows cities to direct economic development, expands city businesses' vision, improves quality of life for the citizen, promotes structure and job stability. I really like this. I mean, you know, I don't like how a lot of times we see how government entities get in business in this, and they kind of pick, as the councilman just said, winners and losers. But in reality, we want winner businesses, and we want them to succeed in Kaysville. But I think it's important that we recognize that all businesses, they really aren't created equal, and some actually have an effect of creating costs to the city, where other ones are, you know, they're giving us a lot of benefit. I think we go after the ones that create benefit. So I really like what's been done here.
Great. All right. Well, let's vote. Councilmember Barber.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Adams.
Just a quick concern that I'd like to note is simply on the fact of who gets to authorize these incentives. It looks like
City Council.
Actually, if you go deeper, it's staff, as long as it follows the procurement guidelines. Now, the procurement guidelines allow for up to $25,000 to be purchased, but I don't think we have a procurement guideline for monies to be donated. But if you read the fine print, it does show that the managerial staff has the right in this document to do that. So if we're using a $25,000 threshold, that means $25,000 gift cards could be handed out, and we'll never know about it. So I'd like to perhaps maybe, I see that look on your face, Michelle. Maybe I don't mean that in a smirky way. I'm just saying, like, up to $25,000 could be handed out without our knowledge. Are we okay with that? We don't have full in this. Am I wrong? I'll stand corrected.
Okay.
Shane?
You are correct. Yeah, there were lots of dealings with businesses on a case-by-case basis, and we wanted to keep a lot of the smaller opportunities to incentivize those businesses at the staff level, so that we could have some productive meetings with some potential businesses as they came in, and not just, if our answer to all businesses is, well, you just need to put that on the council agenda, that's not going to meet, as far as I'm concerned, not going to be a very productive way to do business, to do economic development in our city.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Barber.
I think I was just surprised to hear that. You know, put it that way, it just was surprising. But I think, you know, the alternative of having every single person come in, I think would also be cumbersome and work against what we're looking for here.
Thank you.
Well, how many?
I did not call on you.
Okay, I request you to call on me. So how many do we anticipate?
And I still have not called on you. So if you would just please wait, and I say, Councilmember Adams, and then you speak. That's how this works. Go ahead.
Your controlling personality is very new to me, so never been around someone such. Maybe you didn't get the crown, I don't know. So what, how many of these do we anticipate? You know, $25,000 is a lot of money, Councilwoman Barber. Are we as a council okay with that? Are we okay? I mean, what threshold? What's the last one we gave out? It was $50,000 or $60,000 worth of road-based materials. How much do we anticipate offering businesses? Like 25 to me seems like quite a good incentive. So why are we even getting intertwined in it all? Why not leave it all to staff then?
All right, thank you. And it was $17,000. All right, are we ready?
What was that? $17,000?
You were not called on. All right, Councilmember Councilmember DeCare.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right, a resolution amending the Kaysville City Consolidated Fee Schedule related to the application fees and credits applicable to renewable energy solar generation customers, Resolution 18-9-1. And Shane.
And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to address the D, E, and F, and maybe just one report, if that's okay. Obviously, you'll have to make separate motions if that's what you choose to do on those three items. Last time during the work meeting, we talked about these three. These are all come before you from the Power Commission as recommendations. D, as a reminder, is a resolution that will establish some application fees and solar credits for renewable energy. E is a commercial generation agreement for an interconnection between a business-owned renewable energy source and the city's system. And then F is simply the summer version of that same agreement in E. And in the summer version, we allow the system to generate more energy than it uses, and that is to shave our peak. In the summer, we have a peak of energy use. So D again is in resolution, and then E and F are both agreements. If you're interested in passing these tonight, we need 3 separate motions, and I think we can address any questions you might have.
Okay. We do not have anybody signed up to speak to these items. Any questions on any of these 3 at this time? Okay. Councilmember Barber.
And I thought I saw this in it before when I reviewed this for last meeting, but the terms of summer season, did we have defined timeline? I thought I saw it 2 weeks, or last time we were here.
Yes.
Just so residents know when they can plan on generating more and less.
I'm very confident it's June, July, and August.
Okay.
But let me look over time.
I think you're right, but I just thought for any residents listening so that they know exactly what to anticipate. June, July, and August, which makes sense because you're going to be generating a whole lot more.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, technical questions on any of these 3? Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion on D.
I'll move that we pass resolution amending the Kaysville City Consolidated Fee Schedule related to application fees and credits applicable to renewable energy, solar, specifically solar generation customers, Resolution 1891.
And a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any comments? Seeing none. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. It is unanimous with 5-0. Would entertain a motion on E.
I'll make a motion that we approve the commercial generation agreement.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments?
I have a question.
Yes. Councilmember Barber.
Just the adjustment. I know I asked this before, but if we ever want to adjust these rates, does it go through the same process? The fee schedule?
Yes, and we'll adjust those fees annually, so we'll present them to you. Usually we just present the same thing unless we talk about something we recommend to change.
Okay.
Yes.
So residents can plan on the same thing
Yes.
year by year unless will they be noticed? Or what?
It's part of our budget process, so the public hearing is supposed to also cover the consolidated fee schedule as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. I will entertain a motion for F.
I'll move that we approve commercial summer season power generation agreement.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Barber. Any comments? Seeing none. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, now we'll go on to our work items. Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Get my notes here. Apologize. So the item before you here with the work item is something that the Planning Commission has had a nice, colorful conversation on at their last meeting and public hearing. Essentially, what's come up actually some time ago on a subdivision in town, there was some dispute on whether things were handled correctly, and someone wanted to handle an appeal. And it became clear to the city that our ordinances weren't clear on how that process should be handled. So as we've reviewed that and reviewed maybe the best practices and best way to administer the appeals and that type of process, this ordinance has been put together. Essentially what it is, because an appeal specifically is such a very direct, specific, exact process of what you have to look at, what you have to follow, we felt that it would be appropriate to have a third-party licensed attorney by the state of Utah to be the individual to review those. They're not very good to have before legislative bodies, as it's not about the popular decision. It's about does it or does it not meet what's specified in the criteria and items for consideration. So as we've set this up, this administrative law judge essentially, for example, if somebody comes to the city, asks a question, and it's something that I'm able, as staff, to give an administrative answer to, if they don't like that, they can appeal that to the Planning Commission. And that has been the case and has been set up pretty clearly in our ordinances to date. But if the Planning Commission, for example, were to be the decision-making body and somebody doesn't think that was done correctly, where does it go next? And that's where it was clouded. In this case, it would then go to this appeal authority. The administrative law judge would take a look at what process took place, what was done during the meetings, how the decision was come to, and whether it was right and just in their decision making. We've seen it used. A lot of other cities are going this route. A board of adjustments is often common. However, it's so rare that these things come up. You have a group that you see once every couple years. It becomes very difficult to go through these processes. Again, as it's not very practical or proper to have, for example, the Planning Commission review their own appeals if they were part of the decision-making body. And in some cases, with land use decisions here in Kaysville City, the Planning Commission may be the final decision maker. In others, the City Council has that authority. And so this one could handle appeals from either body. The Planning Commission, after holding the public hearing, recommended approval. They were all on board with the idea of an administrative law judge. The vote was 5-1 in favor of approving it as written. With one additional language, they added the exact term appeal authority be added in there, so the version you have before you includes that. The dissenting vote agreed that the administrative law judge was a good office, but had a difference of opinion on exactly how they would review decisions. And I may lean on Nick a little bit if you need additional detail on this, but the opinion of that dissenting vote from the Planning Commission was that it should be looked at de novo, meaning just kind of from scratch. They could add new evidence, try and get things in to pass things along, versus a review of the record and look at the proceedings. So it's very quasi-judicial, court-like proceedings and how they're looked at. We as a city like the standard review that is in this. Again, Nick can maybe discuss why that's advantageous. Put him on the spot if I'm unable to answer that myself. But with that, passing along the Planning Commission's recommendation with this. And as a work item tonight, we're just looking for your action on where to take it, whether it goes for additional changes or if it's ready for an action item agenda.
Thank you, Lyle. So, any comments? Stroh. Councilmember DeCare.
I've looked this over quite a bit over the couple of years or so, I guess. More pointedly over the past few weeks. I really like the idea of this. I think that this is a change that needs to happen to our ordinances. Having gone through and read through the changes in here, it's my recommendation or my opinion that I feel that we could take this and move it to an action item. So,
thank you. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, I'm probably just like to know how long have you been working on this, and it seems like it's been quite a while.
I'd rather not think about it. Almost it has been some time. So ordinance work often gets done along with everything else, and so based on the specifics and the details of it, it's probably been over 6 months research and looking at different jurisdictions, how they do things, finding the right language, understanding the process that we think would be most appropriate before it's come before the Planning Commission. I think the recognition for the need from it may even predate that slightly, but the actual work on it, multiple months.
Thank you. And I think having a city attorney really has helped. So thanks also, Nick, for your work on this. Councilmember Garn.
Just one comment on the one vote. I think I understand maybe where the one vote on the Planning Commission was coming from on that, but in this case, I don't think a de novo case makes much sense. Number one, it'd be a lot more expensive, I think, if you have to rehear everything and gather new evidence and look at the record. So, and the other thing about it, administrative law judge, I think typically, at least in the insurance department where I work, the administrative law judge is not necessarily looking at the substance of the matter. They're looking to see if process was followed, if the legislative body or the Planning Commission had followed appropriate procedure in making their decision, but not to second guess the decision or the substance of the matter itself.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
Am I to understand that this judge will also have full authority over variances?
In one case, yes, there is authority for variance. So the subdivision ordinance currently places that ability to give a variance or waiver, I guess, maybe more common term, to standards required in the ordinance, and that currently lies with the council. So in the spirit of taking decisions away from the council that are purely non-legislative, so administrative, and extremely specific in the procedures that are to be followed, it would go towards this body based on the way it is written. So that is accurate. Not all variances, though. So typically a variance request from Title 17, for example, which is a zoning ordinance, still goes to the Planning Commission for consideration, but subdivision ordinance is in here as noted.
Yeah, I mean, in theory and principle, I like the direction here because I think absolutely there needs to be an unbiased appeal body, and the case you're referring to absolutely revealed that, and there are other cases that support the need for the appeals body. So I support the direction. I just have a few concerns. I think that the pattern that I've seen as I've sat here over the last couple of years is there seems to be a little bit, and this is not aimed at you whatsoever, Lyle, you just happen to be at the mic. The pattern seems to be that there's a little bit of dilution of the council's power over, like, final plat approvals, now this, and this dilution seems pretty extensive. I mean, I think variances, sometimes people want to come to their elected officials and have them hear them out and not have just one personality but multiple people, to hear that scenario. I would think that this guy or gal could handle, pretty much just appeals and not handle some of the authority of the city. Food for thought. I'd also like to know, so the dissenting vote on Planning Commission, whose dissenting vote was that? I mean,
Commissioner Sunloff, I believe, was the dissenting vote.
I kind of thought it might be. I think it's sound advice where he's coming from. I agree with his sentiment, and I happen to know he's an attorney, so I think that the angle he's looking at there might have some merit. Is this going to be a paid position?
So what it would be is if the council approves this, it would be a contract that would have to take place with a third-party attorney. And so the details of that contract yet to be worked out. I think Nick said that he had seen several examples of what those contracts typically look like. And it's essentially when an appeal is filed, then they start charging. So there are probably any number of ways that could be written. And we would, if we decide to go this direction, put out for an RFQ or RFP to get proposals and negotiate contracts that the council would then have to decide if it's acceptable.
Yeah, a quick search on like full-time administrative law judges revealed that it was about $68,000 to $98,000 a year. So I think we need to discuss the financial element to this. I'm not particularly fond of the no term limits that are set forth in the document. I think there ought to be a term limit, and there ought to be an open enrollment or open registration or application process. It ought to at least be at the maximum of 4 years, in my opinion. I don't think we should let someone get entrenched into this position. I don't know. Nick would maybe have to entertain this one. I don't know if you could create an elected position in a city. Could this judge be elected by the people? Do we have the authority to say?
I don't know of any municipality that elects their administrative law judge. Judge, judicial officer of sorts, kind of sits in a unique position because they need to, in some ways, be beholden to the law, but they also need to be insulated from that to some extent so that they are not making their decisions based on the popularity, which is one of the reasons why the state of Utah appoints their judges and then district court judges and retains them through a nonpartisan retention election. So I've never seen another municipality elect their administrative law judge in this circumstance.
Yeah, I know it's a far stretch of the mind, but I'm just trying to expand our minds a little bit to what could be issues coming down the road. And so the basis for that question would be, yeah, like you said, Lyle, we don't want them just acting on the popular sentiment going on, but sometimes the popular sentiment holds a lot of weight too. But it's the bias that could be created that I'm just looking down the pipeline seeing. Is it that if this individual is beholden to this council and the planning commission, and we have the ability to fire them, as the document states, does that sway their opinion? So, is there a way to cover that base? I think that the direction's great. I think that there's some refinement, just that some viewpoints that I can see. Maybe a random selection process. Maybe attorneys go through a qualification process and it comes down to 4 or 5 of them, and somehow a machine picks the one. I don't know. But I think if my paycheck, if I get to bill you as Kaysville City, if I'm the attorney, I get to bill you $300 an hour for every case, and I start overturning your decisions, I don't know how much longer you're going to use me because I'm making you look bad. So those are just valid points I feel need to be brought up.
Thank you. I think, Councilmember Barber, did you have something you wanted to say first?
Go ahead.
Okay, Councilmember Gurn.
Thank you. I think some of Member Adams' questions may be answered in the packet itself. For example, I don't think it envisions hiring an FTE, but a contract with a third-party attorney. So when you have a contract, that contract might be, I don't know how long the term would be, but you'd have a term, so there'd be some, independence there where you're not reviewing maybe every decision. Well, I don't like the fact that you overturned that decision, so I'm going to fire you. And the other thing to keep in mind is we went until 2017, I believe, in Kaysville, and we're 150 years old, and we didn't ever recognize that we had this shortcoming in the law for how to deal with an appeal because we'd never had one before. So the idea of having a full-time or even much time on this, I mean, maybe I'm wrong and history won't be a precursor of what's in the future, and we could have a whole lot of them, but then it's scalable, and that's why you have the third-party attorney contract, because if we did have a lot of appeals to land use decisions, then you could expand the amount of the usage of that resource.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber.
My question was on the quasi-judicial manner that the administrative law judge will look. Can you talk to that, what that actually means?
Yeah, it's kind of for all intents and purposes, it's a judge, but the judge is only vested with limited authority, which is why it's a quasi-judicial position, as opposed to, if you went down to Farmington, the district court, they would be able to handle a full array of cases. So the judge functions in a quasi-judicial manner for a couple reasons. One, limited case jurisdiction, I guess. And then secondly is they are limited in their standard of review. In this case, if it passes as written, they would review the planning commission or the decision maker's decision and look for substantial evidence that that decision maker, the planning commission, city council, had made the correct decision. The typically a judicial officer is able to look at the entire record and start from scratch. So those are kind of the distinctions that makes it a quasi-judicial officer.
And that goes along with my question is the public input. You know, we incorporate that into the initial process as well, but it seems like here it's just the judge and the applicant, or the appealer. That's the only consideration. So will public input be part of the evidence that they look at?
Yeah, only that which is given as part of the original proceedings. So, and that's where this distinguishes from separate processes. So if it is important that the public opinion be integrated in the decision that's made, then you would go a different route. So for example, just thinking of the subdivision variance that's written in here, if a developer comes in and they want to do something different than the standards written in there, instead of requesting a subdivision variance, I've never seen one, they would actually go through a PUD process typically. It gives the council the discretion and the ability to look at that based on what's popular, what makes sense, not necessarily based on what meets A, B, C, D, and E, certain criteria that are outlined in statute for a variance. So variance, again, we see more often with zoning issues. When the Planning Commission looks at those, a few of you have acted in this manner, is looking at that in a quasi-judicial manner where you may have 100 neighbors that come out and say, yeah, it makes sense, let's let them do it. But you have 5 outlined criteria that the state has mandated that says you've got to meet every single one of these, and it's extremely difficult to do so. And you have to look at it from a different set of eyes than what the neighbors want and what's popular. Puts you in a pretty tough position as a legislature. But you, as a city council, would still have that ability to say, okay, we've heard from the people, can't grant the variance, the administrative law judge didn't, but you can change ordinances or go different means to accommodate and account for those needs and wishes of the city.
Councilmember DeCare.
To speak to the point of variances, too, like Lyle had stated, those are outlined and mandated. That's state code and ordinance. And on my 5 years in the Planning Commission, we probably saw maybe 5 of them, no, more than that, half a dozen or so variances that came before us, and we didn't grant one at all. I mean, the criteria is too strict, it's too limited, it's too narrow in scope, and so. But from the way that I'm reading this, though, would the administrative law judge be able to? There's no way that person can usurp state code, right?
That's correct. Yeah, they have to follow state code.
That's what I thought. Okay,
yep.
All right. Okay.
And the city ordinances, for that matter.
Well, right. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah, in tandem, in concert. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Just thank you, Mayor. Just one more quick comment. It's important to keep in mind that I think the reason for, and I love the idea that we have an administrative law judge, I think one of the important reasons to have one is for efficiency. It's a win-win both for anyone appealing and for the city, because you have an administrative process that can be done quickly and efficiently with speed, and it can address and lower cost. But that doesn't mean just because you have an administrative law judge that someone couldn't file suit also. So you always have legal recourse in the United States to any decisions that are made, or almost any decision, I guess, by a governmental body. And that's particularly true here. So we're not taking anything away from rights. We're actually adding to, plus adding speed and efficiency of a review process.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Adams.
One more tenet of the document to bring up quickly is the fee, the applicant fee. It's $250. And I would think this also stemmed into disgruntled employees, right? Am I correct? Or any issues? This is not just like legislation side. This is city policy. This is employee policy.
Yeah. So this is land use specific, Councilman Adams, because you're spot on. There is a separate section of our ordinances that talks to employee grievances and those considerations, and that continues to remain, I believe, with the City Council. So this would not change that existing process, but land use specific items.
It's divided. Okay, so he won't oversee those rules. And I don't have an opinion here or there on that. I just kind of have an opinion on the $250 fee. It's pretty expensive, if it were an employee were faced with that to file some kind of appeal. I think that's a little bit expensive too. for some of these scenarios. You know, if like this subdivision you're talking about, they come along and, oh, I have to pay my city to say, hey, look, I think there's a blind spot that you're not seeing here. So I wonder if an opportunity to have that refunded, if the applicant is successful in their appeal, that goes back to them. I understand we're maybe trying to weed out the garden a little bit of complaints, but is that steep? I don't know. Seems like it might be for somebody who's just living their life peacefully, and along comes, bam, they see a blind spot that wasn't seen, they win the case, and they had to pay to do it, along with their time.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything further? Okay.
I'll make a motion
thank
to
you.
move this agenda item to an action.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Page. Further comments?
And one
Councilmember
final
Barber.
question. Thank you. When it talks about the notice being given to for the application of review, it just says that the Board of Commissioner Council that rendered the final decision. So if City Council, we re-rendered a decision that was appealed, we would just be noticed that the appeal is taking place, but not part of the review process?
So it's specific to who's noticed, because again, we're not inviting the general public to give comment on it again. We're just looking at specifically what's happened in the case, and so you would be notified.
Just that it's happening.
I believe, been in this in different occasions, that you could attend.
Not participate, but attend and watch.
And you may be asked to participate on different occasions. Is that accurate, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely because they're just going to review the record
Yeah.
and see if there's substantial evidence in the record. They're either going to remand it to you to make the decision or overturn the decision. So it's likely that it would be an open hearing, though, that the public could attend.
Okay. So in the case that the appellant thinks that there was more evidence that should have been provided, should have been handled differently, I mean, what's their process for that? Do they have any opportunity?
And that was kind of the crux of the discussion with the Planning Commission.
I listened to that whole discussion.
If somebody came back and said, "Oh, I've got this new geotechnical report. Look, it works."
Yep.
The reason that I believe the Planning Commission voted the way they did is, with new information, we could simply go back and look at it again at staff as a
Just
new application.
reapply.
So it's been amended. We can start from scratch, and if they, in fact, show the correct items that are needed to make an approval, staff, Planning Commission, whatever it's at in the process, it wouldn't necessarily need to take place with that hearing officer.
I think listening to that interchange when I did that, that's what brought up the question about the public input. And I think if there is maybe substantial evidence, new information, it probably should go out for public input and revisited a second time, which they should be able to do, right? Reapply.
Yeah, and that's what we like as staff
again.
is, if something new comes up, it starts the process over again. It's essentially a new application at that point. And depending on which process it is, and the public would be involved in different ways.
The only line I see as being a little fuzzy is when I reapply versus when I appeal. Maybe that's where city staff can adjust, just based on, is there new evidence? Is there anything different? Maybe make that clear.
This statute kind of mirrors how appellate law works anyway. You are somewhat incentivized to get all your information in at the trial level, and then once it's appealed, the appellate court just looks at what was at trial and determines if there was a mistake made, which is kind of what's contemplated here. Nothing precludes the applicant from reapplying the day after they get the ALJ's ruling with new information.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garn.
I guess this is sort of a comment question, but one concern that might come up is the independence of the administrative law judge. I think a good administrative law judge would be aware of that, but I don't think it would be appropriate for the administrative law judge to get involved at any point in the process until there's an appeal. So, and even after there's appeal, I think the judge should be asking for information if they need it. But I don't think it's ever appropriate, for example, for the legislative body or members of that body to lobby the administrative law judge at any point in the process, either before or after an appeal.
All right. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, I guess just a question I have is I noticed in here, this person doesn't necessarily have to be from Kaysville. It can be anywhere around. And I guess I want to know what the process is going to be like. Is there a standard that you use to, is there people that do this on the side, or how does this work?
Yeah, there are a number of land use attorneys. There's the Utah Land Use Institute, and there's the real property section of the Utah State Bar. And there are a number of, small number, but a number of attorneys who either worked at the Property Rights Ombudsman's office or have extensive experience in property law and land use law. And I don't know that anybody does this full time, but there's a small number that have a couple of small cities that they will contract with. As Lyle said, most municipalities are going to this because they've gone away from a board of adjustment merely because they just don't meet often enough. So
right.
It's not a super lucrative contract that it's something most attorneys do because they're interested in land use and they like these kind of unique situations that arise. So I imagine we'd put out an RFP and qualified attorneys would apply.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, ready to vote? Okay. We're to Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, now we will move to our call to the public. And first is Dean Wall. Welcome back, Dean.
It's not too late.
No, I was here at the last city council meeting, but I
was
couldn't.
not given permission to speak.
I'm sorry. Apologize.
Hammer, please.
Thank you.
Like I say, I was here at the last city council meeting, but I just couldn't stay it long enough. So I'd had surgery on a certain part of my body where you sit on, and I just couldn't stick around long enough. So I was going to say I should get 6 minutes this week since I was here last week.
Nice try.
But no, I just had to say a couple of things. I know he walked out, but I was kind of not in favor of getting a city attorney, but I think you guys did a good job. We've hired a great man at that. I know I went up against Mr. DeCara here and lost, but we got a good city council member out of that, and I want to give a special thanks to our police department and what they do, and I want to thank you guys for what you do. It's a hard job to do. I've kind of studied it over the years, and I know how hard it is, and I appreciate what you guys do. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Randy Van Bosie, please.
Thank you. I meant to get here early to talk about some of these things to some of you and get answers ahead of time, but I didn't, so I'm just going to speak them here, and then I'll email and hopefully follow up. But I am still confused on what's happening with the old library building. I was surprised not to see it on the agenda this week. I honestly felt kind of left hanging after the discussion last week that I wasn't clear on where we're at, and then to not have a follow-up discussion is kind of weird to me.
You're not alone.
But I appreciate that there is discussion going on about the old library building, but I do have a concern that as great as that conversation is, what happens with that building is not going to change the vision of what our community is going to look like in years to come. That being said, there are a couple things that I have seen recently that I think are actually really big paradigm shifts for our community, kind of those watershed moments where you make the decision and there's no turning back. And, one of them is the housing gap, resolution that came up today. I personally am in favor of it, and so I am fine not making a big deal out of it, but it is a big deal, even if it's just a resolution. taking that step, this is a big coalition pushing this forward. And it does change what Kaysville has looked like and what people's expectation of Kaysville is once we start down that road of saying we are going to make more high-density housing. Again, I think it's a great thing, but to shut down discussion on that and have that as just one of the, what is it?
Consent.
Thank you, the consent items. It does not allow that discussion to go out into the community to understand the impact of that. And the other, and again, this is something I wish I could have asked questions about ahead of time, but today seeing that there was a designated code and enforcement officer hired, I understand that that probably was approved through the budgeting process, and it's something that we feel like we need, but that changes the look of Kaysville. And maybe I'm misinterpreting what this position is, but we have always been a community that wants to reach out to our neighbors first. And this position creates somebody that says government now has a role in that more than they have previously. And I feel like, when we were having budget discussions, we discussed fire trucks and we discussed a myriad of issues, but the idea of this person being hired was never publicly discussed, even though it has such a deep impact on what our community is. And I guess I just wanted to comment on that I feel like we're kind of going down a rabbit hole where we're looking to government to solve more and more of our problems, and we're getting bigger and bigger. And if we don't step back and see those implications, yes, it makes the city's job easier, but it changes what we look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Jacob Hill, I think he had to leave. No, I'm sorry.
He was gone when
You know what? I'm sorry. I can't let you. All right. Okay. Let's go to council reports. Power, please. And youth court.
Power, nothing really to report with power. Last Power Commission meeting was canceled. Since they got their big solar push off and up and running, it's the Power Commission meets less and less frequently. So maybe in October, we'll see where things go there. Youth court is back in session with the beginning of the school year. The last 2 Wednesdays, it's been held here. That was my first exposure to it, and it's a really, really interesting process, actually, being tried before your peers, essentially. So very interesting. The 2 cases that I've heard in the past 2 weeks were serious matters, and but the way that it was held or the way that it was handled was very encouraging to see. So, yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful program, and we should all support it. I think our community does. I mean, it's been going on for the past 18 years. So, yeah, so that's about it. So.
All right, community development.
Yeah, just a comment. Last week we had the Utah League of Cities and Towns, the conference, and what's interesting is the things that you talked about tonight. I mean, this is what they're talking about, and this is what the legislature is dealing with. And I think that the cities are going to have some tough decisions coming up, and I think there's going to be a lot of mandates and different things coming down the pipe. But I just want you to know that I think Kaysville City is in a pretty good position in a lot of these areas, and so that's a wonderful thing when you get to talk to a lot of people from a lot of communities and see the problems they're dealing with. I think we're pretty fortunate. So anyway, great city.
Thank you. How about Parks and Rec, Youth City Council?
Parks and Rec, we're just working on our next year agenda for events that we're working on. We have a couple in the fall, specifically the Veterans Celebration and Christmas lighting ceremony, things like that. But I also have been looking a lot into the rec programs after the discussion last week about some overcrowding in some programs, and we have some good ideas how to alleviate that. But more than anything, just really impressed that our Parks and Rec is able to get as many kids in these programs as they do. It's really, really fascinating to see the matrix that goes into that, get them all in there. And then Youth City Council, you saw tonight, and they'll be helping at every single one of these events, which is a huge, huge effort from them, and they're great. So that's all.
All right. Thank you. Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a few comments that I think everybody's noticed, but I'd love to see things get done, and we're seeing some things get done around the city, some repaving on Main Street and up by the DATC, the Angel Street and 200 North intersection being finished. So a number of things have been happening around the city. I even like something getting done when I don't like it, which is new bike safety gates on the new cut-through road near Shepherd Lane. But I understand that it improves safety just as a biker having to go through them. But that's put in now. They did a nice job on it, very nice job. And so kudos to Public Works employees.
All right. Thank you. I do want to just mention quickly, we do have fires going on that are significantly impacting communities here in Utah. So anybody who is so inclined to donate to the efforts down in that part of the state, please do so. Our prayers are with those who are risking their lives to save life and property in that part of the world. All right. I take a motion to adjourn at this time.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.